Welcome back to ABC-7 Extra. Joining us now are the three mayoral candidates hoping to replace current mayor. With us is incumbent Mayor DiMargo, former Mayor Oscar Leeser, attorney Veronica Carvajal, and former city planner Carlos Gallinar. To be fair, there are 6 candidates vying for the mayoral seat. Now, during our second segment, I gave Mr. Mayor 30 seconds for rebuttal. Mr. Leeser believed that he too required a rebuttal since his name was mentioned. So right now, I will give Mr. Leeser 30 seconds for rebuttal.
Yes, thank you for that. You know, you're talking about that you need to figure it out. As a mayor, we need to figure it out. Well, as a city planner, you need to make sure you plan and budget things properly. The only place the city gets money is from the taxpayers. And if you continue to say, well, we'll figure it out and we'll plan it out, and as a mayor, I'll go out and I'll get the money. There's only one place you can get the money, and unfortunately, that's from the taxpayers, and that's not acceptable to me.
Thank you. Now, this question, Mr. Mayor, we'll begin with you. What sets you apart from your opponents?
Well, I would say the 3 crises I've gone through for number 1, and my experience both in business, in the legislature, and running the El Paso Independent School District for 2 years and doing the turnaround there. But most importantly, I would say it's dealing with the immigration crisis that began in October of 2018 as I represented our community. Our August 3rd shooting with a white supremacist, evil white supremacist coming from 700 miles away, and now this pandemic, which we've led through and tried to deal with our outbreak and control. I've dealt with the governor to bring in extra support. This past week, we brought in 100 nurses for our hospitals, public and private, and we're doing all we can to do that, and I think I've been in the crucible.
Ms. Carvajal.
Well, I am 1, a lawyer, 2, an environmentalist, and 3, a fronteriza. I am the only candidate who's a lawyer. I have actually sued the city a number of times. I've also worked with the city on a number of legal issues, including through the pandemic. And I have worked as a community lawyer. I have helped thousands of families navigate different things, including the crises of the natural disaster, the mass shooting, economic recession, and now the pandemic. I like implementing plans, not just talking about them. Now, as an environmentalist, I have 25 years plus of working with the community, tackling environmental injustices, tackling El Paso Electric, SARCO, a number of other issues. And so I am very well versed in air pollution, in the scarcity of water, and soil contamination, which I think is going to be crucial in order for us to understand how to grow and grow sustainably. And lastly, I grew up on both sides of the border. I commuted every day from Juarez to El Paso to go to school, and I'm proud to be back home.
Thank you. Mr. Gallinar.
Saul, I have over 20 years experience of serving this community. I have actually completed and finalized construction projects and many different projects throughout this community. Here's the reality, folks, is that over the past several years, our city is losing more people than any other city in the United States. Our wages are stagnant, and we can't seem to get things done. I have 2 young children. Many of you who have followed our campaign have heard me talk about my daughter, Olivia, and my son, Joaquin. And if things continue and we don't turn things around here quickly, my 2 kids are going to go off to work or go off to college and not come home. I want my kids, and I want every single child in El Paso to stay in El Paso. I want them to make money in El Paso. I want them to be successful in the city that they were born and raised. I want them to take risk opening up businesses, and I want them to raise a family here like my wife and I are doing. But it's not going to happen until we change the leadership at City Hall.
What sets you apart from your opponents, Mr. Leeser?
You know, and that's the easiest question to answer, because I have proposed a zero budget. A zero budget is when you take the budget of the city that's over $1 billion right now, and the total debt's over $2 billion. You take that budget and you start from zero. You have every department head walk in and talk to city council and the mayor and show them what they need in their budget, and things that have been in the budget for many years we may no longer need. So we'll start the budget that will save millions and millions of dollars. So it's really important. And I've made a commitment to the taxpayers that I would look at the scopes of the city manager's duties and make sure that we go back and look at it and bring it back to what it was intended to 15 years ago. And also, I've talked about that I'm going to make sure that I represent the people, not the special interest, but the rights of the citizens of El Paso. We ask 100% of the citizens to vote, and we're going to represent 100% of the people. And I am ready on day one, and it's important you have a mayor that's ready on day one, as we have so many giant issues today.
Candidates, in this portion of the debate, I will allow each candidate to ask one question of one other candidate. I will begin with you, Mr. Gainar.
So the question is for Mayor Margo. Mayor Margo, Oscar Leeser had said that he would not raise taxes his first time around, and he did. Mr. Leeser did not start or complete the 3 signature projects, the quality of life projects that many people voted on. And Mr. Leeser has been investigated for ethics issues while he was mayor. Things that he has said about you. So the question is, Mr. Margo, why should El Paso voters trust that either one of you will get the job done this second time around?
Well, number one, I've never voted for a tax increase, unlike my predecessor who voted in 2013, broke a tie in 2016 for an increase. I vetoed our budget last year because I didn't like the amount of increase they wanted to do it. I was overridden. I only wanted to replace what the state had taken away from us with Senate Bill 2, which was $7.5 million. That's all I wanted to replace. I was overridden. This year, we've got a budget that was renewed with a $16 million reduction and no increase in taxes. The biggest problem we have as a challenge as our city is that 70% of our tax base is residential. And the only way we're going to change that balance and take the burden off our residential homeowners is to have more commercial capital investment, and that's what I've been working on. That's why we brought in Amazon, and that's why I brought in TJX last week with $150 million of investment.
Ms. Carvajal, do you have a question for another candidate?
Yes, Mr. Leeser, do you believe in the free press? And if so, what will you do to ensure that the media in El Paso feels that under your administration they will be able to ask things of you and to talk about things that may not put the city in a positive light?
That's a great question because, you know, right now when we have a city council meeting, probably 1% of the people have the ability to really watch what's going on. So it's really important that we talk to the press and make sure that the press is there watching and reports it correctly because they rely on the press. So I've talked to the general managers of the stations in the last week or so, and I have proposed that I will have a press conference on a bi-weekly basis to a weekly basis and talk about the items we had done during the week and the items that are going on so the citizens of El Paso continue to be well informed. Thank you for that question. That was an excellent question, and the viewers need to make sure they're informed that the media reports it very accurately. So I plan to have a weekly meeting, a press conference to allow the community to see what their taxpayers is doing, their tax dollars are doing today.
Mayor Margo, do you have a question for another candidate?
Yeah, I'd like to ask Oscar a question. You know, I wanted to ask a question about the fact that during your regime you passed 5 certificates of obligations for $332 million, $132 million more than I've ever done. You voted for the tax increases, as I referred to momentarily. We had the Lily Limon, Texas Rangers issues. But the real question I want to ask you is, especially as a car dealer, when I walked in as mayor, I asked for a report on our assets and facilities. And what I found out with our marked police fleet, that over 50% of our marked police fleet was over 10 years of age, over 100,000 miles, and the clincher was that only 75% of our marked police fleet was even operational, and we were spending an extra $3.5 million a year in maintenance. You did nothing during your term to replace those vehicles. That's why we had to go in, and that was the first CO I had to do, which was done in 2019, to buy 300 marked police vehicles, 150 in 2018 and 150 in 2019, and they threw in 14 motorcycles as a extra. But the bottom line was, you as a car dealer, I don't understand. A police vehicle lasts 5 or 6 years. Why didn't you do something and have an asset replacement plan for those vehicles? It's a life safety issue if you pick up the phone, dial 911, and you can't get a response because you don't have enough vehicles.
You know, Dee, that's an excellent, excellent question. If you had done what you said you did, which look at the assets and looked at everything that was done, you would have seen that we ordered the police cars. The police cars, you sat there, and if you Google, you know, police car delivery, you'll see that you delivered cars in first week of August, and they have a July inspection sticker. You took office at the end of June. Those vehicles were ordered by our administration. They were paid by your tax dollars. because it was very important. And what I did, instead of issuing COs, instead of doing them all at once, I know that they're only going to last 4 years, because you're right, I'm a very successful car dealer, one of the largest minority dealers in the nation. So I thank you for that. But I had it where we would literally sit there and renew it. Every year we'd order so many. The next year we'd order so many and do short-term financing. So at the end of 4 years, it would be a flat item to the budget, and we'd continue to change them all. You went out and you did COs, long-term debt. So you're right. I know that those cars won't last a long time, so I would not issue COs, because if you issue COs, those COs will still be paid by the taxpayers, and those vehicles will not be lasting. My administration respected me that I had 2 vetoes, and both vetoes were not, none of them were overridden. And even though they voted 7-0 and 8-0 on them, when I vetoed them, they stood up because they respected the job in my leadership. Thank you. Excellent question.
Mr. Leisure, I now give you an opportunity to ask a candidate a question.
I thank you for that. I have no questions, because I think they don't owe us answers. They owe the taxpayers the answers, and I have no question for anyone. Thank you.
Well, candidates, thank you so much, and thank you for joining us. Remember, viewers, your vote counts. Exercise that right. I'm Saul Saenz, and this has been ABC-7 Extra. Good night y buenas noches.
Buenas noches.